Test, test. Hey, that works. Joining us for this live stream event tonight. My name is Pastor Jason, and I am the senior pastor of Beth Eden Baptist Church. And in my role as senior pastor, I function kind of like the chairman of a board would function for a school. And so that's why I'm the one that's speaking to you tonight. I began attending Beth Eden Baptist School personally in kindergarten and went all the way through my senior year of high school, graduating in 1996. My wife, Bethany, is also a graduate of Beth Eden. She graduated in 1997, and we have a son who will be a freshman in our high school this next year. And I say all that to say this: we are Beth Eden people. We love the school. In a very real sense, we bleed purple and white. Our spring experience was very much like your spring experience. In a matter of hours, we were thrust into a position where we never imagined we would be, where our sons, both our youngest son, who attends another school in the area that is designed for children with special needs, and our oldest son, Elijah, who's in our school, both were home. And we were trying to figure out ways that we would engage with their schools to help them continue their education through the remainder of the school year. We were just trying to figure it out, just like you were, all at the same time, trying to assure them that God was completely in control and that everything was going to be okay while we were trying to make sense of it all ourselves. Well, the purpose of this live stream tonight is to give you an overview of what we are anticipating school will look like during this 2021 school year. We had more information than we could possibly include in one live stream tonight. You folks want to go to bed tonight. And so we are actually going to have 2 additional live streams. The next one will be next Monday night at this exact same time at 7 p.m. And we will go further in depth on our COVID-19 response plan for this school year. And then the following week, on August 17th, again a Monday night at 7 o'clock, we will go further in depth on the topics of music, sports, art, and student life, and how we intend to have all of those different components of our broader education program during this school year. Before we begin this meeting tonight, I want you to know that the meeting will begin with some kind of big picture considerations, and then it will end with some more specific points. About halfway through this live stream, it will feel like we're going to bring it to an end, but we're not. I want to encourage you to stay on. We'll have a second part where we will try to answer 5 important questions that we know are on your mind, questions that many of you have already asked, and by God's grace, we hope we can answer tonight. So we are excited about returning to school in just a few short weeks. We want all of our Beth Eden Baptist School families and families that are considering enrolling their students to know exactly how we are planning on resuming school this fall. Proverbs 16:9 is one of my favorite verses, and it says, "The mind of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps." If ever we have had to learn to plan while trusting God's sovereignty and waiting on His timing, it is right now. So, as a Christian school, we are announcing these plans with a giant "if the Lord wills" asterisk over them. We recognize that these plans may change, just like they did in March, with or without a moment's notice. We also know that there are many categories of questions that you have tonight, and in a lot of ways, we've had those same questions in preparing for this meeting. But we have chosen to try to, for sake of time, boil down those questions to 5 big categories that we want to address this evening. Those 5 categories for 2021 are: number 1, the fact that we are planning on having live, in-person classes for all students. Second, we want to let you know how we are planning and have already begun the process of strengthening our remote options, and we have named that Nights Mobile. Tonight, third, we are announcing a flexible block schedule that is designed to serve families with a variety of needs and desires. Fourth, we want to let you know how we are endeavoring to maintain a healthy and safe school environment, especially amid COVID-19 concerns and regulations. And then finally, we want to emphasize our desire to keep the main thing. Namely, we are a Christian school and we believe in maintaining a discipleship focus and emphasis, and it's our desire to do that in 2021 in a fun and engaging way. So, we'll start with live in-person classes. I think virtually all education professionals agree with the fact that it is best, if possible, for students to be in class every day. Now, public schools and even some larger Christian schools are struggling to meet that desire because of their size. We are in a different situation. Because we have smaller classes, we have a smaller student-to-teacher ratio, and we have a fairly large facility, we believe that we are able to be more nimble and more agile than other schools. And so to that end, we are planning on having in-person classes beginning on Wednesday, August 26th. Now, you should have already received communication where we let you know that we were postponing school starting a week. The only reason for that was we felt we needed an extra week so that we could start the school year well. So the first part of our kind of Big Five plan to get back to school is live in-person classes. The second part of that is a flexible schedule. The required responses to COVID-19 have created some really difficult challenges for schools. Some families want their kids in person and in person at the school all the time. Some families would prefer that their kids be entirely remote. Some families would like something in between. Everyone wants a strong core. By that, I mean they want, in a Christian school, Bible, English, history, science, math, and they want that in a way where they can complete the entire school year. Some families want the extra classes that have historically been a part of our Christian school, like PE and music and art and some of our special student life experiences. Some families would rather go without all of those things together because they perceive that there would be some greater risk in having their students in those different classes. So how do you plan for that, especially with limited resources? Well, our answer to that is a kind of partial block format. Now, many of you are probably aware of what some of the major school districts in the Denver area have announced, where by block format, they mean that some students will attend on Monday and Wednesday, other students will attend on Tuesday and Thursday. That is not what we are referring to here. What we're referring to is a block format where our core classes for elementary and our core classes for secondary are in a block of time, and then our special classes like music, art, PE, student life things are also in blocks, and we're going to describe a little bit about that in just a moment. So just to be clear, when I'm referring to our core, I'm referring to Bible, English, history, math, and science. When I'm referring to our specials, I'm referring to music, art, PE, and student life. Now, so that you can kind of get a grasp of where this is going, our plan is to phase in our special core as a second phase that will begin in the week of October 5th. And the reason for that is all of us agree, I think, that it is critical that we get our education core in place and functioning well right from the beginning of the school year. And then once we are functioning well there, then we can add that second phase of our specials block. So you may be wondering, what exactly would that look like? Well, let me show you what our elementary schedule will look like. So for our elementary students, they will attend class 5 days a week, and their core will take place from 8:30 in the morning, 8:15 in the morning until 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Then, beginning on October 5th, we will introduce our specials block for elementary students on Monday through Friday from 2 o'clock to 3:30. Now, some of you may already be thinking ahead and say, does that mean that you aren't going to offer any kind of music, art, or PE experience for our elementary students for the first 5 weeks of the year? You understand, Pastor, how important this is to our little students. And the answer to that is yes, we understand that. And so we have encouraged our elementary teachers to go out of their way to try to incorporate those things, those special classes, into their core in a way that is very safe. So that's what it looks like for elementary. What does it look like for secondary? And the answer is a 4-day block for our core subjects. So that will be from 8:15 till 2 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, with the special classes beginning October 5th on Friday. And as you can imagine, that will give us all kinds of flexibility with how we use that specials block on Friday. Now, let me just highlight some of the advantages of going with this kind of block schedule. This means that for all of our families, we will be accomplishing our core in a specific set of time that ends at 2 o'clock. It also means that once we begin our specials, it will be very natural for a family to choose between having the core, and if they want to have the entire day and have both our core and our specials, you can. If you prefer to simply have the core in the morning and then the specials, for instance, for secondary on Friday, you can add that on. It gives our students and their families quite a bit of flexibility. In addition to that, the next point that we're going to talk about in the Big Five is how we are managing remote education this year. And one of the real burdens last spring was that our teachers were often working from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock or midnight every night, and we simply know that that is not sustainable. By having our core teachers finish their day at 2 o'clock, that gives them a few hours before the evening to be able to engage our remote students and to be able to help them that way. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, Pastor Jason, if we choose the option that is a core only for elementary, only in the morning, and until 2 o'clock, and without this special block, or if we as secondary families choose to only have our student in school Monday through Thursday, will there be a price break for that? And the answer is, for this year, we have to offer one price for tuition for everybody. And the reason for that is just quite practically, if we had only a portion of our students pay for our specials that would take place in the later afternoon for elementary and on Friday for our secondary students, we simply wouldn't be able to offer those. And we know how important that is for so many of our families. Well, that brings us to our third part of our back-to-school plan, and that is our remote learning. We have called that Nights Mobile. As you well know, we scrambled to introduce this back in March. And I am so thankful for Lisa Glazier, who is our managing administrator, and our faculty, and all the hard work that they put into us being able to have any kind of remote plan for those critical months. But going into 2021, and with all of the uncertainty pertaining to COVID-19, we knew that we needed to have an even stronger remote plan. And we needed to have that for two reasons. Number one, we knew that some of our families would want to choose a full mobile option altogether, that they simply wouldn't feel comfortable yet having their students in class, in person in class with the rest of their classmates. The second reason for that is that virtually every education advisor says the same thing. You need to have a strong plan for possible COVID-19 related closures. And so to that end, we have gone out of our way to try and make Knights Mobile even stronger for this school year. Most of you are aware that we sent out a survey about a week ago, and you all did a wonderful job of completing that survey, giving us constructive comments, and we have reviewed that survey and have tried to shape how we are going to improve Knights Mobile for 2021 by the things that we already knew needed to be strengthened and some of the things that you highlighted. So you can anticipate with Knights Mobile this year, whether you're using the Knights Mobile for remote education entirely, or you're in the place because of your own child's illness or some kind of COVID-19 interruption that we would face, here's what you could expect. You could expect more video content from our own teachers. You can also expect, and this is one of the reasons why we went with the block schedule, you could expect that every one of our teachers, part-time and full-time, will maintain virtual office hours, meaning they will be online at a time where you as a parent or your student can jump into their online meeting, visit with your teacher, ask questions about assignments or the specific teaching content, and we feel like that availability for all of our families will be critical. A third component of trying to make Knights Mobile stronger for this school year is what we would call synchronous live-streamed chapels. So twice a week for our elementary students, and 4 times a week for our secondary students, we will live stream our chapels not only to our classrooms on campus, but also to our families who are off campus. And in that way, the students that are utilizing only the remote option or who are unable to be in class would still have that real-time Bible experience with their classmates. And then finally, we have endeavored to streamline this entire process through standardized platforms. You could say it this way. We are taking the KISS approach. Keep it simple, students, and keep it simple, staff. And so we have identified 3 web-based online platforms that we're going to use the vast majority of the time. The first one of those is one that you should be readily familiar with, and that is RenWeb Fax. It is a learning management system. And if you can imagine it this way, remember back when you were in college, parents, before we had smartphones and all kinds of cool devices, you likely had an assignment day timer, and you would write all of your assignments in that. Think also back to maybe your elementary years where your teacher had on the corner of her desk a plastic little container, and that's where you put your finished assignments. And then maybe you could think of it finally as kind of like the teacher's grade book. If you put all 3 of those things together, that's what fax and RenWeb functions like. There, it is designed to facilitate online communication between students, families, and teachers. Teachers can post assignments. In some cases, students will submit assignments through RenWeb Facts, and it'll be useful both for our in-person and remote students. We have also zeroed in on 2 Microsoft products that will serve as, that will kind of fill out our complete online platform. We selected both of them because they give us more liberty to control content and seem to be more safe, and you would understand as a Christian school why those things are important to us. We can also use them at no additional cost to the school or to our students. So the one on your left is Teams, and that is the Microsoft equivalent of Zoom. It's kind of like a virtual meeting place. So if RenWeb Facts was kind of like a assignment pad and an assignment container and a grading book, then this is kind of like a virtual classroom that we could use at times. SharePoint is kind of like a common desk or a shelf where teachers can put resources for students, and students can even place things for the teachers. And so we have tried to standardize our online platforms for the convenience of our teachers, our students, and our families. Our teachers are kind of going back to school right now, and they are working together, collaborating on simple best practices in all 3 of those platforms. So the 4th category then of our Big 5 plan for going back to school is a safe environment. And for most of our school families, you know that we have been prioritizing safety on our campus over the last few years. In the last year of Mr. Francis' leadership, and then the last year of Lisa Glazier's leadership, we were working hard to improve our operating procedures on the campus and even make campus upgrades to be more safe. But obviously, that became much more challenging and significant when COVID-19 hit. Now look, as a pastor, I am well aware that people land on a very wide spectrum of opinions pertaining to COVID-19. And if I could give kind of some gracious titles to those who are on the far ends of those spectrums. On the one end, we have some folks who would say COVID-19 and the responses have been way, way overblown. On the other end of the spectrum, we have those who would say this is an existential threat and we can't do too much to protect ourselves or others. And the reality is, most of us, no matter where we stand on that spectrum, we all think that our view of COVID-19 is right, balanced, and everyone would be better off if they just viewed it like we do. But the problem is, they don't. And so for all organizations, and especially Christian organizations, we are trying to serve well those who are on a wide variety of that spectrum. So we've identified 5 categories of Christian response that we are trying to maintain that would minister to those regardless of where you are on that spectrum. The first is courage. As believers, we don't fear death, and so to that end, we don't fear illness. We wouldn't prefer it. We try and avoid it, but we don't fear it. And so from that perspective, we want to have courage. And I think even as parents, we view this season as an opportunity to teach our children true biblical Christian courage. A second category would be safety. And I don't believe that these actually oppose one another. I believe they actually are very compatible with one another. By safety, we mean that we want to be good stewards of our bodies. We want to avoid getting any kind of illness that would make us sick and that would challenge our ability to, in full capacity, serve God and serve others. In addition to that, we wouldn't want to do anything that would put anyone else at risk. The third category is authority. As believers, we recognize that God raises up governments, and Although we may not agree with every edict or mandate or ordinance of human governments, we recognize that God has called us to submit and to obey unless what the government is telling us is directly opposed to what the Scripture commands. And so consequently, we are leaning towards, as often as possible, honoring what our government requires of us and even trying to honor those things that are requested. A fourth category is Christian love, recognizing that there are others that are in a different place on this spectrum than I am. And so consequently, I take seriously the command of Philippians 2 that I'm going to regard other people as more important than myself, and I'm going to look out for the interests of others rather than looking out for my own interests. And the fifth category is wisdom. When we have exhausted all of those categories and we're still trying to make a choice and decision as to what's best, we pray for godly wisdom. And part of that is not wanting to put ourselves in a position where we would be liable in the event that something very terrible happened. And so the bottom line for us at Beth Eden Baptist School is we will follow whatever is required of us by the CDC, by the Colorado Department of Health, and the Colorado Department of Education, and Jefferson County Public Health, as long as it does not directly contradict our obedience to the Bible. Beyond that, where they are making suggestions, we will filter our decisions through that 5-part filter: courage, safety, authority, love, and wisdom, with the goal of practicing a common sense, Beth Eden fitting approach. So I think wherever you are on the spectrum, you have to answer the question, how committed am I to the to the organization that I'm involved in, that I love, to see to it that it exists on the other side? And can I flex my opinions or perspectives to help them get there for the benefit of everybody? So to that end, we've identified 7 categories of practical response that we are working through, and we're filtering those through those 5 categories of Christian response. Again, we're going to spend a substantial amount of time next Monday in a live stream at this same time identifying and working through our plan in these 7 categories, so I'll just mention them tonight. Number 1 would be well checks, making sure that students come to school, are healthy, and maintaining attendance standards based on the fact that students can demonstrate that they are healthy. Second is safe spacing, and because we have a fairly large facility, we are able to space out our hall rooms and classrooms. Third category would be preferring small groups to large groups. In fact, there are some categories of large groups that really we can't begin the school year with, like our large chapels. Fourth category would be contact with a limited number of teachers, and that is part of the rationale behind the block schedule. Hand washing and face coverings is the 5th category. 6th category is facility cleaning. And then the 7th category is how will we respond in the event that there is some kind of breakout here at Beth Eden. In all of this, we want to be as unintrusive and have these plans in the background as much as possible. Meaning, we want to meet these requirements. We want to be safe. But we don't want that to be the thing that defines our school year. And again, we'll talk more about that a week from tonight. So, our big 5 for 2020-2021, live in-person classes, remote options, Nights Mobile, which is named Nights Mobile, and we've tried to improve that for this year, a flexible schedule, a safe environment, and then we've been wanting to drive at this one all night, our discipleship emphasis, and hopefully in an engaging and fun way. As you remember from the previous 4 years, we have had a school theme each year that served as a kind of spiritual rallying point for our staff, students, and families. 4 years ago, that theme was Thrive. 3 years ago, our theme was Unite. 2 years ago, our theme was It's Simple. And then last year, our theme was Core Strength. And so this year we're introducing a theme as well, and that theme is based on John 3:30. These are the words of John the Baptist. Most of you know that John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus. His entire life was to serve as a neon sign pointing to Jesus, the long-promised Messiah who came to save men from their sins. And so our theme for 2020-2021 is from John 3, verse 30, where John the Baptist said, "He must increase, but I must decrease." He must increase, but I must decrease. You know that biblically we were designed for a upward life, namely that the great command is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You also know that we were designed for an outward life. The second great command is to love your neighbor as yourself. And can you imagine a better year with all of the oppression of COVID-19 and the restrictions and kind of everybody fussing, for us to set our mind as an entire school on knowing, loving, and serving God and serving others, that He must increase and I must decrease. But we want to highlight that theme in a fun and engaging way. We know that our students need their education and discipleship course. We need that in-person experience with teachers and friends, but maybe just as much of that in this school year, they need to be challenged spiritually and be refreshed in their relationships. They need to laugh again. They need to play again. And so this year, we have not only selected a spiritual emphasis, greater than, but we've wed it with an island theme, kind of like a summer camp theme. The first 3 days of going back to school, August 26th through 28th, will be Aloha days, as students are welcomed back from their long break. We'll have back-to-school student life activities, in-person and mobile orientation that will be engaged in a fun way, and all with a spiritual strong emphasis. Rather than having just a Spirit Week, each week we're going to have a Spirit Day. That will probably start the school year with some spaced games and fun dress days, but hopefully as the school year progresses, that'll develop into more interactive and even missional activities as the school year goes on. As I already mentioned, we'll carry this theme of greater than and even the island theme into our elementary chapels twice a week and our secondary chapels 4 days a week, which will be live streamed. Can you imagine our buildings decorated with palm trees? The student body will be divided into teams. We'll call them crews. Regions of the campus will be renamed as islands. And maybe we will even enjoy an all-school Spam lunch at some point with Mr. C sometime during the school year. It's going to be a great year. And so to that end, we recognize that we're not going to be the unicorn school in Colorado that changes nothing for the 2020-2021 school year. Frankly, I don't think that school exists. You know, from a church perspective and from a school perspective, we haven't assumed that we would begin by doing everything that we always were able to do, but rather we've asked the question, what can we do? And so we have come up with a plan to focus on 5 categories: live in-person classes, remote options, a flexible schedule, safe environment, and discipleship emphasis that will be fun. For those that have already enrolled, we hope to see your kids in just a few weeks. For those who are considering enrolling, we just want to remind you that our vision statement, our mission statement as a school, is to provide an educational excellence in a caring Christian atmosphere. And by God's grace, we've been striving to do that for 45 years. We would consider it a privilege to serve you and your students as you seek to educate them with a Christian worldview. If you are looking into our school, we'd like to invite you to reach out to us and maybe even contact us for setting up an interview. You can reach us by our phone number, 303-232-2313, or you can reach out to us at our office email address, office@BethEdenSchool.org. Now, there's no doubt that for many of you, you have additional questions. And I'd like to take just a few more minutes to try and answer some of those questions that we have anticipated. The first of those questions pertains to our leadership. We could not be more grateful to Lisa Glazier for all of the work that she did, not only during the heart of the school year last year, prior to COVID-19, where she taught 3 of our English classes on a secondary level, and then also functioned as the school administrator. Not only are we thankful for what she did in managing through COVID-19, but for the first 2 months of the summer, she spent all day and much of her evenings and into the night researching and preparing us so that we could be in a position to begin the school year this year. She ended up resigning because she was just physically and emotionally spent. And you can imagine that given the many burdens that she was carrying. We did not then have an immediate succession plan for her. And so, who is leading the school right now? The answer to that is we created a 7-person administrative team. I'm on that team as the pastor of the church. In addition to that, one of our other assistant pastors, Pastor Randy Vaughter, who is also a graduate of Beth Eden Baptist School, has served in a variety of different roles on our church, is serving on that admin team. His wife, Nikki Vaughter, who has for the last few years served as our school secretary and receptionist, is on that team. And she's the one that's helping us with communication with all of our school families and those that are interested in possibly having their kids in our school. In addition to that, we have added 2 secondary teachers and 2 elementary teachers. Our 2 secondary teachers are Jenny Schlosser and Melvin Kakyoren, and our 2 elementary teachers are Jessica Kuhn and Karen Meyer. And we are meeting throughout the week and trying to shore up especially those 5 categories that we were referring to earlier. A second question that you might ask is, are you presently searching for a school administrator? And the answer to that is yes. We felt that the highest priority was to get an administrative team in place so that we could make final preparations for beginning the school year. We are currently pursuing possible candidates. If we do not have a strong candidate and soon, then we will assemble a search committee to help with the process and hopefully have an administrator in place very quickly. A third question that we have heard from our school families and we know is on your mind is, what about sports? Are you planning on having secondary sports both on the middle school and high school level this year? Well, if you're following the news, you know that the Colorado High School Activities Association, which we are part of, has submitted to the state of Colorado plans for reopening fall sports. And they have only had a few of those sports authorized so far. So golf, I think women's softball, maybe tennis, maybe a few other sports. But the sports that we play in the fall, like soccer and volleyball, have not yet been approved. In the event that those sports are approved before the year begins, we are committed to play if they will allow us to. We recognize that there will be substantial regulations that will govern participating in CHSAA sports this fall if they allow those sports to us to have those sports, but we're committed to playing if we at all can. If not, then our athletic director, DJ Little, and Pastor Randy Vaughter, who has again served as a camp director and has all kinds of program experience. They're working together on setting up some intramural sports, possibly some sports camps, and even sports ministries. And we will announce more details regarding sports, PE, music, and art on August 17th on our Monday night live stream. Maybe the question that everybody is asking is, what about masks? What about masks? If my student attends school this fall, will they have to wear a mask? And we know that there are some who strongly favor masks and may be uncomfortable with other students not wearing masks. We also know that there are some who strongly oppose masks and who would be opposed to the school requiring their students to wear masks or face coverings if they are not mandatory. So what we will do is we will follow CDC and state of Colorado, and by state of Colorado, I'm referring to Colorado Department of Health, Colorado Department of Education, and the Jefferson County Health. We will follow whatever requirements they place on us. So if teachers are required to wear masks, then we will wear masks. If students in certain age levels are required to wear masks in certain places, then we will require those students to wear masks. However, if face coverings for students are not mandatory, we will not make them mandatory. We will honor then and enforce what each family desires for their students. In addition to that, recognizing that it is a likely possibility that we will have some students who are wearing masks and some or face coverings and some students who are not, we will go out of our way. We are committed to maintaining a judgment-free Christian environment where no matter what your family decides, if masks are not mandatory, no matter what your family decides, a student can be here submitting to what their family feels is best and not be poked fun of or bullied on account of that decision. So finally, this question, and thank you to many of you who have reached out with this question. How can you help? How can you help? Well, number one, you can pray. Pray that we will be wise in decision making. Many of you have already been praying that amidst all of these changes, we would have a strong and complete faculty, and almost all of our faculty from last year are returning and have actually signed their contracts, are in place, and we're excited to begin the school year with a strong team. But you could continue to pray. Second, please send your students. The bottom line is, we've heard some that say, well, maybe we'll just keep our students out for this school year, and then once things are back to normal, we'll bring them in next school year. The bottom line for most schools like our school is if that happens on too great of a scale, there won't be a school to come back to the next year. And so we're calling on all of our Beth Eden school families, as many as possibly can, to have your students in school this year. Make this an unusual year, but a strong year of learning. Help us through this process. Third, spread the word. We are aware of what's happening in the school districts around us, and we know that what we have just drawn up represents a contrast from what's happening in the schools around us. And we believe that other families would be interested in having their students in a school that's meeting these COVID-19 restrictions and challenges in exactly the way that our Christian school is. So spread the word. Let other families know that how we're managing this, and that it would be a great place to have their students. Fourth, volunteer. And I can't say exactly right now all of the areas that you could volunteer. We just know that with the plan that we laid out, we will have many of the volunteer opportunities that we've had in the past, and we'll have additional volunteer opportunities. So look for communications from our school in ways that you can volunteer and help. Finally, you can help by partnering financially. Some of you have asked, how is the school doing financially? And thank you for asking. Well, let me take kind of a roundabout way in answering that question. Some school districts are expecting a 40% decline in enrollment. And if that happens for individual schools or for school districts, that'll have long-term devastating consequences for education structures as we know them. So those of us that believe in our education philosophy and our school, we are doing all we can to make it through a financially turbulent season. Our church, Beth Eden Baptist Church, has made significant commitments to the school financially this year. We made the commitment for this school year to kind of push pause on one of our other ministries, Camp Eden. That doesn't mean we're closing Camp Eden. It doesn't mean we're selling Camp Eden. It just means that we are minimizing our financial responsibilities and liabilities to the camp so that we can redirect some of our attention to Beth Eden Baptist School. In addition to that, our church has voted to contribute $70,000 to covering COVID-19 expenses that we incurred pertaining to last year so that we could begin the school year at ground zero financially. As a church, we have made another substantial commitment, and that is we know that we need leadership in place for our school for this year, but we also know that we're going to have some challenges making our budget with an anticipated lower enrollment. And so our church has committed an entire salary to hiring a school administrator and covering that on the church side. I say that to say this. We're making substantial sacrifices so that we can have school next year. In addition to that, our teachers have made a substantial commitment, and that is they have all taken a 5% salary decrease for this next school year. In fact, all of our team, ministry-wide, church, camp, and school, have made that same commitment. And we're doing that because we believe in Beth Eden Baptist School and what it means to our families. There are certain enrollment marks that even with those commitments have to be met to be able to keep our Beth Eden school structure in place and meet our expenses. We're very optimistic that we will meet those marks. We have had consistent interview requests over the past few weeks. If we are not able to meet those marks, however, we would need to see an increase in general fund support and ongoing partnerships. And if and when we get to that place, we will communicate those needs to our school families and welcome any kind of help that you can give so that we would be able to keep Beth Eden Baptist School in place, continuing to serve in this kind of unusual year and existing once we're on the other side of COVID-19. I want to thank you as we wrap up for all of your patience over the last few months. Some have described managing COVID-19 organizationally as like putting together a puzzle, but without having the picture on the lid and not having all of the pieces. It is like trying to manage moving targets. And we've just concluded that we can no longer aim. At some point, we have to shoot. And so we have been patient because we didn't want to overpromise with the fear that we wouldn't be able to deliver on those promises. And with what we know right now, especially regarding COVID-19 restrictions, we are excited about this plan. So I want to thank you for watching this live stream tonight. We look forward to having your kids in school in just a few weeks, beginning August 26th. And I'll see you next Monday night for our next live stream, where we will go further in depth with our plan pertaining to COVID-19. Thank you again for watching, and good night.